So today I want to talk about a topic that I get asked about a lot of the time, and that is how to budget when you are on a low income. So there could be lots of reasons that you're on a low income. So it could be to do with the pandemic, it could be that you're a single income household, but whatever the reason is, there are lots of things that you can do to help your budget stay on track. So this is the Looking After Your Pennies YouTube channel, and my name is Charlotte Jessup. Now, over the years, our income as a household has varied, and you can go and check out my budgeting videos. So even in the last few months, our income has been up and down and all over the place. So there have been times when we have been living on one income or two part-time incomes, and then when we were traveling, we pretty much had not a lot of income at all, but that's a different story. However, I have got fairly good at learning to budget regardless of what our income is. So I thought it would be helpful in this video to share some tips and strategies that I've used from my own experience and some tips and strategies that I have heard from others that have worked for them. And let's start with a little bit of myth busting. Now, some people think that just because they are on a low income and they are literally living hand to mouth, that there's no point in them budgeting, all of their money goes. And I'm here to say, I think there is a place for a budget. You might not have a huge amount of flexibility in that budget when you start, but you should be writing this down. You need to get familiar with those figures and actually become in control of your budget rather than your money being the thing that dictates what you do with it. You need to be the one that is making the decisions. I remember in my student days, I would literally have a pot of money and I would spend it, and then when it started to run out, then I would start taking action. However, as I grew up and got a family and a house, I had to learn that budgeting actually was the thing that made the difference. When I looked at the money and decided where I wanted it to go rather than where it just ended up going, that was instrumental in changing how my finances improved from then on. So let me give you these 5 strategies for budgeting on a low income. So stick around and I will share all of them with you. So number 1 is get to know your finances. So like I said, you have got to know exactly what money you have coming in and what money is going out. And the best place to start is with what you have going on now. Now, it could be a long time since you've actually sat down and looked at what you're spending. Most people, when I start talking to them, they have a rough idea of where they think their money is going. Yet when they go through the process of actually tracking their spending, they actually realize that there's probably a lot more money going on in one particular area. So in my personal experience, I remember the first time I started tracking my expenses. And what I did was I looked at food. So food is a big one for a lot of people. It's a variable expense, so that means it can go up and down, and it really varies kind of from month to month. Now, when you start tracking your expenses, what you will see is actually exactly what you are spending. And this is the journey that I went on. So I realized that yes, I was staying in budget, or I had this figure in my head that I thought I was spending on food. This didn't take into account popping to Little Tesco and, getting top-ups throughout the week. And actually, I had to kind of change the way I budgeted. I started allowing myself to have a kind of top-up fund that I used as I went through the week. And when I started budgeting this in, I found that it was much easier to stay on target with my food shopping. It also allowed me to address some of the habits that I had in terms of maybe not buying enough milk, and that meant that I had to go and pop to the shops. So it gave me this information about my finances that I could use to change my habits and to change my budget as the month went on. So the first thing that you need to do to get to know your finances is to start tracking your expenses. So this can be as simple as a piece of paper, or you can use an expenses tracking spreadsheet, whatever you work best with. But every time you spend money over the next month, I want you just to write it down, and you can start to categorize this too. So maybe think is this food? Is this fun? Is this a utility bill? Something like that. So anytime any money leaves your account or your purse, your wallet, write it down. The next thing you need to do is collect up bank statements. Now, the really good thing about bank statements is they give you those kind of retrospective looks at your finances. So you can see what happened last month, what happened the month before. How does this month compare to this month last year? Now, you might need to use this information to look back at some of the annual expenses that are happening too. So I know there are some things in my budget that don't come up every month, instead they come up every year. So it's a good chance to look at those things and make a note of those so that you can put some planning in place for those expenses that are coming up in the future. Another important information that you want to find out when you're looking at getting to know your finances is, when do things like contracts expire? When does your mobile phone contract run out? When can you switch your energy supplier? When can you switch your broadband? All of this information is really helpful because those are the points when you can look at lowering those costs. So put the effort in now, collect up all this information, and then you'll be ready to go into the next step fully armed with the facts and figures. So number 2 is to create a realistic budget. So we're not going to overcommit on this. Now, lots of people, when they're looking at reevaluating their finances, they're thinking, I need to get sensible. I've not got a lot of money coming in, so I need to really cut back. And what they end up doing is they end up cutting back too much. And what this means is that it's unrealistic. So think of it like if you were going on a diet. If you try and cut out all of the stuff you love, you're not going to stick at it for long. You need to create a realistic diet that you can stick to. So the same is true of our budget. We need to create a budget that actually very much reflects our normal spending for the first couple of months. And you just want to make sure that you can develop some consistency when you start. After that, you can then start looking at making some tweaks and changes. But in the beginning, you just need to build the habit of creating the budget, putting the information in, and just learning maybe where things are not quite how you want them to be. Now, I have a free budget spreadsheet that can help you with this. I will drop the link in the description. You can go there, you can get my free spreadsheet, and you can just fill in all the boxes. It will really help you have a clear idea of where your money is going, where you want it to go, and how your savings and investments and stuff can start to build up. Now, what's really key when you're creating this budget, particularly when you're on a low income, is to really prioritize those expenses first. There are some really important things that you are going to have to pay for. So you see a lot of information on the internet that's like, pay yourself first, put some money into savings and investments. And that is fine. But when you're on a really tight budget, when your income is literally covering your expenses, it's really important to prioritize those fixed expenses. So these are going to be things like your mortgage, your rent, and you're also going to need to cover some variable expenses like food. Now, obviously, there might be some flexibility in these, and we'll look at these in the rest of the video, but when you do your budget, put in those important things first. Once you start looking at ways that you can increase your income, then you can start putting some extra money into some of these fun pots and holiday pots. But it's really important to prioritize those expenses when you're on a low income. So number 3 is to highlight some areas for improvement. So as you start to do this budget, after a couple of months of doing it, you might think, right, wait a minute, I'm overspending in these areas. And actually, I know I can cut back here. You also might start to see that some of these contracts that you had before were expiring. So perhaps you had a contract for a fancy iPhone, and now you're realizing actually there's some room to save money there, and you could go to a SIM-only contract. So all of these things are going to then create some little bits of space in your budget. So it's going to give you that flexibility to start putting money towards things like your savings, your investments, going on holidays, and saving for your kids, or anything else that you might want to save up for. And that is a really important step. It's just acknowledging that these are the things that you want to work on. And it can literally be as simple as highlighting them on your spreadsheet or just making a note. Now, some key areas that I find that people are usually overspending, and it certainly reflects my own spending patterns First one is food. So I've mentioned this already, but there are lots of things that you can tweak and change about how you bring food into your home, how you prepare food, and all those sorts of things that can help reduce your costs. I have a great video about this that I will link in the description so you can head there, and it helps you save money on your food. So go check that one out after you finish watching this video. Another thing that you might want to look at is debts. So where are you paying money for a debt? So, maybe you've got a car loan, even like a mobile phone contract, maybe you've got credit card debt or other loans that you're paying off. This could be a real time to start highlighting these areas and thinking about how you can create a plan to free yourself of some of that debt. These are all going to be things in your budget that are going to allow you, once you've paid them off, once you've cleared them, once you've reduced them in some way, to gain a little bit more breathing space in your budget. Now, it's important when you highlight these areas that you are not going to jump straight in, slash these things, be like, right, that's gone, that's gone, that's gone. What I want you to do is think about working on these things slowly. So over a period of a few months to a year, you're not going to be able to change everything that you dislike in your budget on day one. So make sort of incremental changes. So you might think, right, my food budget is too high at the moment. But if you just cut that in half, you're probably going to find that you're hungry, the kids are whinging because you haven't got their favourite treats, and you're going to find yourself back down the corner shop or, popping out to the supermarket to do a top up midweek. And this is when the budget is going to go completely out the window. So instead, try and reduce it by a small amount. So can you find ways to reduce your food spend this week by £5? And then maybe next month you try and reduce it by another £5 until you get to what you think is a comfortable point. It's likely that when you make these cutbacks, particularly with things like food, that you are going to find that you're going to try and reduce it a little bit more 1 month, and it's going to be really tricky. And that is going to be your kind of sweet spot, the point where you kind of think, this is it, we can't go much lower without feeling like we're really depriving ourselves or we're not getting the amount of food that we need to feed ourselves. So do this in small amounts and find where you are comfortable and what gives you the most flexibility within your budget. So number 4 is to look at your income too. So I know this is budgeting on a low income, but think about what things you could do to actually increase your income. Now, when people talk about budgeting, there's a lot of like, cut this back, cut that back. But actually, there's only so far that you can cut your budget back. And what you might need to do is look at how you can increase your income as well. Now, there are lots of ways that you can look at increasing your income. So an important one is making sure that you are getting the right benefits or you're getting all the money that you're entitled to. So if you have had a change in your income circumstances over the last year, maybe you've been on furlough or maybe you've been made redundant, then it is worth inquiring to see if there are other schemes, grants or benefits that you might be entitled to and claiming for those. Even things like tax allowances. So if you're now working from home, you might be able to get some sort of tax back because you've had additional costs because you've been working from home. So make these inquiries, make sure that you are getting as much money in your pocket as you can from the very beginning, because that gives you more money to spend on the other areas. So another area to look at is your actual job. Is it time for you to ask for a promotion? Is there any way that you could maybe look at another job in another position that would give you more money but for the same hours? Could you pick up a few more hours? Is that possible for you? Now, I'm not saying that all of these things are going to be possible in your situation, but these are the sort of questions you need to be asking. Is there a way that you could get more pay from doing the same thing because you have been working hard, you are a reliable employee? It is worth asking these questions. And if you think that you can't ask for a raise, then think about other ways that you could maybe increase the amount of money you earn from your job. So are there additional like secondments or other jobs that you could pick up that are attached to your job? So, could you do a couple of extra hours in the morning in a different role? You need to think about what might work for you. And if that's not an option, could you move to a completely different job and potentially get more income that way? And if you don't want to do any of that, then maybe look at picking up a side hustle. I've got lots of great videos about side hustles, lots of content on Instagram and on my website as well. So do go check those out. Now, I believe that there is a side hustle out there for everybody, and it doesn't need to be starting, a whole business or something that you feel like you have to put a lot of creativity into. There are lots of side hustles out there, things like match betting, surveys, even just scanning your receipts after you've been to the shop can make you money. So go and have a look at the options that are out there and see if you can find one that works for you. So the final point number 5 in budgeting on a low income is to make sure you check in with your budget regularly. Particularly when money is tight, it is important to make sure that you are staying on track. And if you're not on track, to realize that it is okay to make tweaks. So you might feel like you've budgeted a certain amount for food, but actually you need a bit more. It's not working out. Maybe you've cut back too much. But you might realize that actually you didn't need as much for your petrol for your car. So you can move a bit out of your transportation costs and put that into the food budget and still manage to stay on track. A budget should not be something that is inflexible. It shouldn't be something that you write down at the start of the month and then you think, oh, that's it, it's done. You need to be checking in with this. You need to be looking at your figures. Keep tracking your income, keep tracking your expenses, and make sure that you are staying on target. Now, I think that at least once a week is good to check in with your budget, but it's also good that at the end of the month or whatever your period, your cycle for your budget is, that you actually sit down and reflect. What went well? What didn't go so well? What changes do you need to make your budget work even better for the following month? So make sure that you are interacting with your budget, you are using it, and you are checking in regularly to make sure that it is still working for you as you go through the month. So that's it. That is budgeting on a low income. Lots of the tips that I've made here are helpful for anybody on a budget, and it's even more important when you are on a low income. There have been various points throughout my life where I have not earned a huge amount and I've had to be really, really tight with what I have had coming in and how I am spending that. But actually, I realized that with a careful budget, I can make my money go further. And it gives me this sense of empowerment that I actually get to decide what I do with my money rather than my money figuring it out for itself. So if you take one thing away from this video, I hope that it is that budgeting has a real power whatever income you have. So thank you for watching today. Don't forget to check me out on my other platforms. You can catch me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. I'm all over the place. So please do come find me on those platforms. Don't forget to grab your copy of my free budgeting spreadsheet. It is in the description for this video. So click there and you can download that and use it to help manage your budget. Thank you for watching today, and I hope to see you in the next video.